Well, we will call this Tuesday, November 13th meeting, informational meeting to order. Welcome to everybody here in attendance, those that are at home watching. I just wanted to quick send out thoughts and prayers to Counselor Erickson and her family on the loss of her uncle. We're thinking of her today. First on the agenda, we have a report from the UDC meeting the other day from Counselor Neitzer.
Thank you. There are a couple things that we covered at the UDC meeting last week. The first is we just had a report on the Benson Road interchange project. There's environmental study going on and some of that federal work that has to be done to move forward with that. All of the steps you have to go through when you're talking about redoing an interchange. There's a lot of traffic volume there, and we need to reconstruct and expand that interchange in the coming years, particularly as development starts happening to the east, and then it's really going to be necessary. So that was just a report. The other thing that we did was we approved the 2018 Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan. You find in these UDC meetings that you have these reports and documents that are a mile long, so it's kind of a mouthful. That's an important document. It lays out the goals and state of the transit system. We're required to adopt this plan periodically to qualify for federal transportation dollars. Some of the things that were included in that document that I think are worth pointing out, we need to create a regional transit system that allows connectivity between communities. That's one of the goals. We want to work to expand and reimagine the volunteer driver programs. We want to keep paratransit service parallel to the fixed route system within the 3/4 mile service area. We need to develop an agency rate structure based on the full cost allocation model to offset agency day trips on paratransit. And we need to start a statewide human services transportation coordination process so we can all work together to find solutions. Some of the challenges that were identified in the document is that federal capital funding has decreased substantially, which makes it difficult for us to fund our operations and capital needs. Funding for capital, including buses, used to be 80% from the feds, and now it's 20%. Human services trips significantly increase the paratransit budget, make it difficult to have a long-term sustainable system. Paratransit and human service trips, particularly, are choking off funding that could be used to improve and expand the fixed route bus system. We haven't been able to add new routes in many, many years, even though the city has continued to grow. There's little to no coordination of human services trips between the stakeholders. Paratransit has become what they would call a natural support for the human services agencies. Human service trips account for 47,000 paratransit rides per year at $250 a ride charge to the passenger, and the cost is closer to $40 a ride. That's a very large cost to the taxpayers. Taxpayers are spending over $1.1 million per year on transportation for the South Dakota State Human Services Department, rehabilitation and pre-vocational programs that are operated by Dakota Abilities, Lifescape, and Southeastern Behavioral Health, in which the agency is paying for the service through Medicaid Choice Waiver Program. So there's more and more. It's a very interesting document. Really what it comes down to is there's a lot of demand and there's a lot of need of people in our community to expand the fixed route system, but until we can figure out how to get paratransit working better and figure out how to finance that better, figure out how we can cost share, it's going to be hard to expand the system. And I could go on and on. I've got pages here, but it's a beast, and that's going to be one of the biggest issues we will be continuing to work forward on. Thank you.
Great report. Thank you, Counselor.
Next. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
One of the other things that happened at the UDC meeting is that in the effort to move it along while everyone was looking at their feet, I did volunteer to serve as the vice chair of the Urbanized Development Council for starting in January 1st of 2019. So
Great.
The chair is actually a position that has to be filled by a non-member or a non-elected official from that board. So, and Carol Tweet has graciously served as the chair for the last couple of years, and she's going to also continue on as the chair in 2019. So,
good, great news. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, if nothing else on that, next on the agenda, Administration Communications with Chief of Staff Erica Beck. See if I can
find a pen here.
Good afternoon, Council. I just wanted to take a moment, and I'm hoping that he's watching this afternoon, but I just want to take a moment and wish our mayor, Paul Tenhaken, a happy birthday today. It is his birthday, and so hopefully if you all see him, you can wish him a happy birthday as well. A couple of updates for the council this afternoon. Last week I commented on the former Ice and Rec property being sold to Glory House and that being scheduled within the next 10 days. We closed on that at the end of last week, and so expect to see the Glory House and their contractor starting to move dirt yet this year for that project. Additional updates specifically from Park and Rec. The Arboretum Master Plan is scheduled to be on your consent agenda for November 20th, that council meeting. If you have any specific questions regarding that master plan, please don't hesitate to contact either Don Kearney or Tori Miedema in the Parks office. On December 11th at the informational meeting, the Parks team will be present to talk with you about an update to the golf course operations within that department. A couple of other things specific to Public Works. Next week, the Public Works team will be presenting at informational meeting on proposed revisions to Chapter 57, which will include revisions or proposed revisions to the garbage and recycling ordinance. Recently in the news, you may have seen some information about the proposed interchange at 85th Street and I-29, and that reaching a critical milestone, meaning the infrastructure justification report being approved for that project in order to move forward then with the environmental assessment that are both needed to be approved in order for that interchange to move forward with construction. That interchange justification report was approved, and so what I'd like to do is schedule some time on an upcoming informational meeting in order to get that group back together, meaning the private landowners surrounding that proposed interchange along with city staff and other stakeholders to give you an update on not only the interchange itself, but proposed development that the landowners still anticipate occurring in and around that area. And again, just for those of you that maybe aren't as familiar with that project, this has been an ongoing effort for a number of years in which there's definitely a partnership occurring between the private sector and various government entities in order to fund the specific reports that are necessary in order to move this interchange forward. So look forward in the next couple of weeks in order to have that be placed on your agenda. And then the last update, several months ago I had commented to you at an informational meeting that the city of Sioux Falls had 5 different applications move forward from various organizations in our community to the South Dakota Housing and Development Authority for consideration for funding for various housing throughout Sioux Falls. I was just informed today that next Tuesday at a South Dakota Housing and Development Authority board meeting is when they will be making an announcement on the award of those applications. So assuming that next week at this time I have an update for you on that, I will definitely provide that. And again, just as a reminder, those aren't coming directly from the city as an organizational unit. Those are coming from different organizations in our community who are pursuing funding sources for affordable housing within our community. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can move on with the agenda.
Thanks, Erica. Any questions? Looks like we're good. Thank you very much. We'll move on to City Council open discussion. Anybody have anything today? Councilor Staley?
Excuse me, kind of got a cold thing coming on here. I wanted to tell the citizens about my day today. And this is a day that many of us have, just so they understand what we do. We come to these meetings, and they've been extremely long meetings, and we're happy to be here until 10 or 11 at night. That's the official business. But this morning at 8:30, I had a meeting with our Public Works Department, and Councilor Janet Brecky came in. We talked about these the concerns about the water the reclamation rates going up. Then at 9:30, I met Councilor Sale over here. We talked about his concerns about affordable housing. Then at 1 o'clock, Councilor Starr and I went over to the St. Francis House, And wow, we had a great tour of what their development is going to be coming down the road, the proposals. Also, we're hearing from neighbors about that concern. So it's another one of those issues where we have a little bit of a grind about building, residential rights, that thing that we've been addressing so frequently here. And then at 3 o'clock, I went over to Lifescape and met with a resident homeowner there and the head of Lifescape and looked at their parking issue, which they're still concerned about. So point of telling you this is that we collaborate, and I've been working to collaborate to bring counselors into the discussion, because you cannot replace being there, listening to it. And I think it's so important to have a lot of ears listening to the conversation, so we all hear the same thing. But also, just so the citizens understand that good government means that we reach out and we're listening to all parties involved. We listen to the corporations, we listen to the homeowners, we listen to businesses that want to expand, because we all matter here. Everybody needs to have a place at the table. So it was a busy day, it was a good day, and many of us, this is what we do all the time. So just so the citizens understand, we're working hard to represent you and make this the best place possible to live in.
Thank you, Councilor Staley. Yes.
I just want to have, just briefly, last week we changed the meeting date so that 4 of us could attend the National League of Cities Conference in Los Angeles. That conference is a host to a large variety of elected officials throughout the nation, mayors from small and large cities all throughout the nation. The tally was 3,500 attendees, with dozens of exhibitors and state-of-the-art technology and ideas and programming. So we returned from there supercharged with fresh ideas, a lot of energy, having heard from some extremely exciting speakers. And I just wanted to mention that. I know that it's our obligation to give a more detailed explanation, which I can't wait to do, to share with the public and the staff some of the ideas that I come home with. But I just wanted you all to know that I think it's good to be home, however, because obviously in Los Angeles it's a difficult week for them. And, to be a host of that event and have Mayor Garcetti speaking to us on several occasions and yet having to deal with what was going on in California last week. So our condolences go out to them for all of that they're going through. But it was a fabulous conference, and I thank the city for allowing us to attend.
Thank you, Councilor Brecky. I would agree with all of that. Anybody else? Councilor Kiley?
Yeah, I would just like to state that I did enjoy my time in the sessions at the National League of Cities. We actually had 3,800 participants there, so it was a little higher than what Councilor Brecky had mentioned, but regardless, give or take a few hundred, it was well attended. But I wanted to especially just, my heart goes out to the community of Thousand Oaks, who was the latest community that was victimized by a mass shooting, and then later victimized yet again with fires threatening their entire community. And it's not just Thousand Oaks, but it's other areas threatened by the fire too. So my heart goes out to them, and I wish them the best in the future.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Starr.
I'll jump into one of the things that is going on today, November 13th, is one of my favorite things in the entire world to do, and that is eat. There is a fundraiser continuing today that is being done by the Kids Table Restaurant Fundraiser, and it's South Dakota Voices for Peace. And the details are that today restaurants across Sioux Falls will be donating a percentage of their sales directly to the group's initiative to build legal and support services for over 300 unaccompanied minors from Central America currently living in South Dakota, and nearly a dozen children who were separated from their parents at the border that are now reunited living in South Dakota. So I had a chance to eat breakfast and lunch at a couple of the restaurants that are participating, and I hope we get out of here early enough in between meetings to get a chance to join. There's a long list of them that are available on Facebook for the South Dakota Voices for Peace Facebook page to participate when you eat this evening.
Great. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to presentations. Our first one for today will be from the Sioux Falls Development Foundation, an update by Bob Munt. Welcome.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here, and I didn't think that my first presentation here to you would be with a walker up in front, so I apologize for that, but I told my board that I would give an arm and a leg for this job, and so I gave a leg already, so I'm halfway there. Thanks for having me today. I'm Bob Munt. I'm the president and CEO of the Sioux Falls Development Foundation. I'm excited to be here, and it's only been a few months since I've been here, so I am still learning. I'm more impressed really every day by the strength of the Sioux Falls economy and the dedication of our team and the volunteers and our leadership in this community. It just really strikes me that this is a community that has its act together and is really moving forward in a very aggressive direction, and I appreciate that. A little bit about me. I grew up right across the river in a town called Inwood. I went to Westland High School, graduated from there, went off to college. I probably was a little more familiar with Sioux Falls than I should have been. My senior prom was at the Holiday Inn downtown here, so I kind of knew that area pretty well, but also did all of our shopping and stuff up here as well. So I went off to college at the University of Northern Iowa. And there I did an internship with the Waterloo Cedar Falls Chamber of Commerce, which was my first exposure to what chambers of commerce and economic development organizations did. And I really fell in love with it. At that time, it was just an option for me to take a look at what I wanted to do. And working with businesses and working with communities to grow and prosper those communities just seemed like the thing that I wanted to do. And so from there on, I got into that. After that, I was able to secure a position in Sioux City, Iowa, at the Chamber of Commerce there in Sioux City. Again, working with the Convention Visitors Bureau, working with their economic development group, their chamber. And I did that from 83 through 87. I then moved on and was able to manage my own chamber up in Brookings, South Dakota. I managed the chamber in Brookings from 87 to 92. And in 1992, I got the opportunity to move to Council Bluffs and run that chamber and the economic development group there. I was able to build the efforts there for 25 years. I had some opportunities to leave, but my kids were growing up there and I wanted them to have a place to call home. And so I ended up being there for about 25 years, raised my family there. And in 2017, having raised my family there, I got an opportunity in Wisconsin, south of Green Bay, Wisconsin, a place called Appleton, Wisconsin, the Fox Cities Chamber. So I ran their economic development group there and their chamber for about a year and a half. My mom is getting up in age, and so when this opportunity came up about a year and a half later, I decided that this was the opportunity for me, and I was fortunate enough to be hired here in Sioux Falls. So it's a great opportunity for me to be here. I am pleased to report, again, after 4 months, that the numbers posted in 2018 here in Sioux Falls really do indicate that this is the best city for business. Our economy grew at a strong pace with over 6,100 building permits issued, $700 million in construction activity, and $457 million in capital investment to date. We're working with a number of companies right now, actively exploring the business advantages of Sioux Falls locations. This year, we've strengthened our relationship with site selectors around the country, hosting many of them here at the Sanford International Golf Tournament. So during that time, they were here. We showed them the community, showed them the positives that we have here. Our hosting opportunities, again, illustrate our business strengths and the amenities that we have to draw those folks here. Our partnership with the Governor's Office of Economic Development, Lincoln and Minnehaha County Economic Development Associations, and the City of Sioux Falls really help us to create all these leads and all these things that we have when we bring these people in. So again, thank you for your efforts in that. Another vital partnership that we have is our connection to area commercial real estate brokers. They are really part of our team. We will work together to leverage the strengths again of the community and bring their prospects in, their clients, and we'll work with them. We don't care if we get credit or if they get credit. We want to make sure that those companies that want to come here absolutely have the opportunity to be here. As you also know, national publications agree that Sioux Falls and South Dakota are best for business. Just recently, Forbes magazine again ranked us #1 for business and careers. And in addition, and this is one of the most exciting ones for me, our community is one of 2018's best cities in which to start a business and one of the best cities for young professionals. That's a lot of kudos. I think that's really what we're trying to do in bringing young people to this community. This year's construction projects and accolades are many, too many to talk about right here. Foundation Park, another big part of what we do at the Development Foundation. Again, very active in 2018. New roads have opened up the site for future development. We're seeing significant construction activity out there. This year, Windshield opened phase 1 as they began construction on phase 2 and are talking about additional phases after that. So again, a great company to have out in that park. Dakota Carriers is building 2 facilities on 8 acres out there, and right now Nordica Warehouse will soon be constructing their 200,000 square foot warehouse out there as well. So construction activity is picking up in Foundation Park, and we're very happy to see that. In addition to that, the Development Foundation maintains an inventory of additional affordable land and available buildings in the Sioux Empire Development Park. Today, these parks are home to 150 businesses, employing nearly 13,000 people. Prospect activity for the Foundation Park and all our parks is brisk, and we're looking at great things in 2019. So again, just a very active time for us, and we hope that that will continue. Our partnership with the city to enhance our existing business retention and expansion programs will ensure that we pay attention to our own as well. Local companies looking to grow and expand will receive one-on-one assistance and support in their expansion efforts, resulting in the creation and retention of our existing job space that's here already. In addition, we'll have new emphasis on attracting targeted businesses to our region, making sure that these businesses bring high-value, high-paying jobs to this region. As the greatest challenge right now for our continued growth, attraction, retention, and expansion of our talent and labor pool will also be emphasized heavily. Our staff and our partners will be working collaboratively with business community to attract new workers to the region while focusing through job training and job sharing practices through our WIN and workforce efforts. Partnerships with our local K through 16 educational institutions will also begin to fill that long-term pipeline for jobs here in the area. The attraction, retention, expansion of both business and talent will be complemented by new, aggressive, targeted marketing. Our outreach to site selectors, real estate professionals will all be coordinated with our local partners and GOED. As we develop our talent strategies looking forward, marketing for new workers and new talent will be coordinated with all of our business partners, the city, and our private sector partners to maximize our impact in bringing new people to Sioux Falls. At this time, I also want to acknowledge our staff. Many of you know that we went without a president for several months. During that time, we've got a great team of people who kept the balls in the air. Our Vice President for Economic Development, Dean Dietzick, our Director of Research, Membership, and Communications, Karen Ruland, Director of Finance and Accounting, Joe Watkins, Director of Talent and Workforce Initiatives, Jennifer Tuttle, our Director of Marketing, Megan Jancic, the Executive Director of Makita Lakita, Nick Fosheim, our Administrative Assistant, Sharman Smith, and Rock Nelson, who runs our International Trade Division. We're all just stepping up to the plate and have done a great job. In addition to that, I'm here to announce today we've also hired a couple of other individuals. We've hired Denise Gazzetta as our new Vice President for Talent and Workforce Development. Denise will work exclusively on workforce talent and development, bringing new people to Sioux Falls, but also working with existing parties and existing potential markets that are here for labor as well, including special services, including special populations, everybody that we can think of to gain in our market of talent. Also, Mike Gray was started today, as a matter of fact, as our new Director of Business Retention and Expansion. Many of you know Mike. Mike will be working again with our existing businesses and industries to make sure that they are happy here, that they are taken care of, and that we have the resources here to take them to the next level of their operation as well. I believe that we are strategically poised for another great year here in Sioux Falls in 2019. Several of the projects and inquiries that we've been working on this year we think could be good news, big news in the next 6 to 12 months. It's an exciting time for development here in Sioux Falls. I'm happy to be a part of this community. It's great to be back home again. I'm looking forward to working with all of you in moving this community forward. Again, you've done an outstanding job, and I commend all of you for your efforts. Thank you for the services that you do. Thank you for the time that you commit every day to this job. Some people see you here on Tuesdays and think that's the only time that you're here. We all know that that's not the case. You guys put in a ton of work over and above what you do here every day. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate that. And again, we look forward to working with you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Again, I've been here all of 4 months, so I may not have some of those answers, but if I don't, I'll turn to Erica and she can help me out. I have 2 members of my board of directors here today too. I think I have 2, right? Yep. Here today, so they're here to answer any questions too. So
Okay. Thanks for toughing it out and being here with us today.
yeah, thanks for having me.
Questions? Councilor Staley.
I just have a welcome, Bob, and I appreciated hearing your resume, and I really appreciate the wealth of just local experience that you bring to it. A Midwesterner with, it sounds like you're full of common sense and caring, and so I think we're going to see some great things from you.
Thank you. My parents were big on common sense.
Good.
In a lot of different ways. So that was good.
Anybody else?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a question for you. I have a passion. One of my passions in attaining this office was to try to work with the school district, and now I've been having some meetings with STI on finding a way to make the teaching of English classes and English education available in a broad, wide, and cheap way. And I've heard through the grapevine that was an interest of the Chamber and the Development Foundation as well, that I should be talking to someone over there. Have you guys had that dialogue? I'm convinced that, since that our expectations are that these jobs that we're creating, good jobs that we're creating, will likely be filled by a broader demographic that we've had in the past, that to prepare these people for success that are going to be coming into our community, a broad approach to English education would be very helpful for our future. And I've just wondered if you've had any dialogue about that, or if you have any interest, in working with me on that issue.
The answer to that question is absolutely. We can't fill the jobs that we have with the people that we have here today. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to work with the immigrant population to bring people into this community, whether they're United States citizens or foreign citizens, whatever they might be. We need to work on that issue, and the language barrier is part of that we have to work on. We've had some initial meetings with STI on that. We've had some initial meetings with a couple of the folks in the school district, and I can't remember their names right now, but we talked about that and how we might be able to start incorporating more of that into not only the K-12 system, but also into our education system. I believe Augustana College is also looking at some options there as well. Augustana University, is also looking for some options there. So short answer to your question, yes, we're very interested in that, and certainly can incorporate that into the things that we do.
You will be hearing from me.
I was hoping I would.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Neitzer.
Excuse me. Bob, Foundation Park, would you know offhand how many acres have been developed and how many there are total? I want to say there's 800.
So total, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Dean. Dean's our resident expert. There's 820 total acres out there, and of the ones that have been developed, how many have been developed?
Developed thus far, probably about 350.
Okay.
Build ready sites.
So when we say build ready, we don't mean that there's actually buildings on them.
Yeah, it's ready to
They've been
go.
graded, they've been scraped and those types of things. They're ready for development. So right now we have 3 businesses out there: Windchill, Nordica, and the Carriers out there right now. And I believe they take up about 54 acres. Or is that just Windchill?
That's just Windchill.
Okay.
54, 16, and 8.
There you go.
Very good. 54, 16, and 8. It sounds like an acres for the different.
I'll let you do the math.
Yeah. Well, for your benefit, I would say that Foundation Park has been very high profile, if not in some circles controversial. And I think it would be really helpful if you were to showcase as time went along, possibly how much property tax revenue is being generated yearly as it's developing. And then I think the cumulative platting fees that have been paid.
Sure.
I think that would be something that, I'm not asking for it now, I'm just saying that there's a lot of question as to how much has been invested by different people and what is the return, and I think those sort of dashboard metrics would help.
Yeah, I'd be happy to bring up those numbers. We, of course, have those. I just don't have them off the top of my head, but we can give reports on those on a periodic basis if you'd like us to do that. It's my intent, to show up here in front of you kind of in this environment, maybe quarterly, maybe every 6 months, just to kind of talk about what's happening out there and make sure. But in the meantime, if you guys have any questions, or if you ever want to go out to Foundation Park and take a look at what's out there, if you want to take a tour of the facilities that are going up out there, we'll do everything we can to make that possible for you guys. So just work through our office and we can make that happen.
Yeah, I can say, having been out there on tours before, it's mind-boggling the amount of dirt that's been moved.
Yeah,
So,
what's mind-boggling is the amount of dirt that you have to do just to get it ready.
Yeah.
Just to move it and get it ready. So we have a great topography here, and one would think that it's fairly flat, but when you actually get out there and start surveying it, it's not flat at all. So a lot of dirt to move out there, and that's all on us, and so we're going to be doing that to make sure that we have a site-ready facility, a site-ready place that businesses can locate.
okay, and my other question would be, we obviously have a lot of things going for us in Sioux Falls, but what challenges to attracting employers do we have? Is it lack of available workforce, job skills, development, regulation, those sorts?
Yeah,
what
I
is
think
it?
right now workforce is the number one issue that we talk to with anybody we talk to. It's workforce. And again, there's no silver bullets to that, but we're going to try an awful lot of things to get people new ways and new ideas to get to work here. And so whether that's developing pipelines from colleges and universities outside of the region, whether that's developing pipelines to what we call boomerang families, whatever that might be, we're going to try those types of things. We're going to work internally with our K-12 education and our K-16 education system to plug them in to Sioux Falls. Once we have them there in the education system, let's keep them here. So we're going to try a lot of different things, but that's probably our number one issue that we face is, the workforce. The other one is, quite frankly, the issue that all Midwestern communities seem to face is that we're in the Midwest. When I was in Omaha, Council Bluffs, we had the same thing. Outside of the Midwest, no one knew where Omaha, Council Bluffs was. And so outside of the Midwest, not a whole lot of people know where Sioux Falls is. But the more accolades we get in these magazines like Forbes and Fortune and some of the other things that we have, and our ability to kind of get that press time, the more people are going to sit up and take notice. So things are changing, and I think we're going to continue to see the positive change.
Okay, so once again, all bodies and organizations like yours need to work together on the workforce development.
Absolutely.
We have to pound that home in one Sioux Falls, I guess.
The only way we can. One Sioux Falls workforce. If you have family members that are not here now, they should come back, right? So I'm trying to get my 3 kids to come back now so that we're here. So I'll see what happens in the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? If not, I had one, it kind of ties into Councilor Neitzert's question. So this new workforce development position, how recent was this added? And kind of maybe the background or experience on who's coming in for that?
The position itself was actually funded 2 years ago, 3 years ago as part of Forward Sioux Falls. Okay. There was a person in that position for about a year. They ended up leaving that, and it's been vacant since probably almost a year ago. So when I came in, one of my first things was kind of analyze what it was that we needed in that position and go in search of that person and the person I thought could fill that position. And we found that individual right now to fill that position. It's going to be very strong in marketing. It's going to be very strong in marketing to outside talent, making sure that we get the word out about what Sioux Falls is and what we have available here. But it'll also be someone who can then plug into the local community to make sure that we're tapping into and utilizing all the resources that we have here in Sioux Falls as well.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully that goes well. Look forward to seeing how it develops.
She starts December 3rd, so shortly after that we'll try to get her here before you guys to introduce her and let you know what her talents are as well.
Sounds good.
Just not a question, just a statement. Again, fresh back with new knowledge. For me, anyway, it was new knowledge. A new term came to my attention that I had not heard before. It was called the silver tsunami, and it was referencing in the workforce development arena the retirement of the baby boomers and what it's going to do across the country. And that it's not just here in Sioux Falls that we have a workforce development issue, but it's all across the country, because as the baby boomers retire, not only will all of us around the country be competing for that talent to refill those existing positions, but also for the talent to produce for the growth positions. So I just add that to the conversation because that was something that was a phrase I had not heard before. And again, some of the larger cities are actually hiring staff to prepare for that particular issue. In some of the larger cities, it's huge. Like in the Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant in Los Angeles, they're going to be losing 40% of their workforce in the next 5 years. So interesting stuff.
Again, across the country, and we're no stranger to that here. I mean, a large portion of our manufacturing workforce is going to be retiring here in the next 5 to 10 years, and there's not a whole lot of people moving into those manufacturing positions. Our companies are aware of that. They're taking steps right now to start recruiting, kids out of the tech schools and things like that. So we're seeing them make that. One of the things with the Silver Tsunami, though, is that what we're also seeing is that we are, for lack of a better term, recycling and reusing. So a lot of the people who have had a career in finance or whatever it might be are now finding themselves kind of getting back into that workforce, and our companies are starting to adapt using part-time, using temporary, using contracted labor, those types of things, and utilizing that talent that's already there. So when people say that they're retiring, sometimes they don't really mean that they're retiring. It's just that they're not working for that company anymore, but certainly their skills are going to be used. And so we're seeing a lot of our companies start to better utilize that talent that's out there already. And quite frankly, the senior population loves that because they can be flexible with what they do, still maintain their retirement status, but actually continue to stay on top of things and stay motivated. So fun to watch that kind of stuff. At the same time, frustrating when all these people are leaving their jobs and we're trying to fill those. So we're seeing a lot of mechanization. We're seeing a lot of robots. We're seeing those types of things. And with that comes additional training for how to run those robots. And so we'll continue to see a lot of that as we move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Anybody else? Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be working with you guys.
Okay, next on the agenda, the Emerald Ash Borer update with Kelby Maris. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, City Council. Kelby Maris with Parks and Recreation. Thank you for your time today and allowing us to provide for you an update on our Emerald Ash Borer response. Unlike the last presentation, the picture on this slide is from Sioux Falls. It's from an volunteer effort that I'll get to later. I would also like to thank all the other city departments that have assisted us with this response plan. It truly has been a citywide effort and a team effort, and we couldn't have done it without their help and support. So an update on the response plan. The infestation has not been detected beyond the boundaries found during the original delimiting survey that the state completed in May. We continue to monitor the spread through the use of traps and visual inspections. We have issued more than 8,000 tags to licensed arborists to track the treatment of ash trees. We've issued 68 permits issued to remove ash trees within the right-of-way. As of last Friday, we had removed 199 ash trees from the park system and also removed 80 stumps. And we do currently have 2 requests for street tree planting permits as a result of the ordinance change that we recently had. Our street tree removal plan, we have marked 2,188 trees for removal. Sizes range from 8 inches to 67 inches in diameter breast height, so the diameter of the tree at 4.5 feet off the ground. The average of 25 inches is larger than what we expected. We expected about 18 inches as an average, and we saw 25. So these trees, as you can see in the picture here, are very large. A lot of the trees are large. That 67-inch tree is a multiple stem tree, so it's not just one 67-inch tree, it's several different ones, but the one in this picture here is 40 plus. So these trees are very big. We have sent letters to the property owners whose trees have been marked with a blue 9 for removal in 2019 to verify treatment status, to make sure that if they have treated the tree or plan to treat the tree in 2019, that they make sure that they let us know so that we can remove it from the removal list. They will also be getting a letter prior to the removal of these trees, again, to verify the treatment status and to provide for them a timeline for that removal. We've also received proposals for the removal of street trees and for the inventory of street trees. Those proposals are currently being reviewed, and we hope to have contracts before you soon. I mentioned a little bit earlier the public tree removal plan. As removals begin from 33 parks, we will eliminate the ash tree from 24 of those parks. Park crews are actively working on those removals. Also, state penitentiary inmates spent 172.5 hours removing 21 ash trees from Dunham Park as part of a chainsaw certification training. The chart on the right hand of this slide kind of shows you the progress that we've made, the number of trees targeted in each one of those parks, the ones that we have removed and the ones that we have remaining. The ones in red are parks in which we have completed our ash tree removal for the year. Notice that some of those trees, or those parks from Lion Centennial down with the 0 now, are the parks without any ash trees. So just a short time ago, Mayor Tim Hankin unveiled the Sioux Falls Relief Project, which would be a funding effort that would support the reforestation of Sioux Falls parks and public right-of-ways with a diverse urban forest in response of the trees that we're going to lose through this infestation. Definitely need to take some time to thank Lawrence and Schiller for their logo design and the website creation that they've done as part of this effort. This project will also allow the opportunity for Sioux Falls residents, friends, businesses, and other organizations to help reforest through a variety of different ways. Not only through financial contributions, but we have also had people reach out to us who have been willing to help us with the planting effort. People willing to come out and actually plant trees. So I definitely see volunteer planting days in our future. More on the relief project. All the donations will go through the Community Foundation as one donation point. Online contributions can be taken by credit card or by check. And there are a couple of screenshots of the website that is up and running. We have established giving levels that you see here, and donors will be recognized on the project website in these giving levels. So our replanting strategy, obviously we'll target areas in which we have already removed trees. We plan to develop a cost share program and encourage replanting of street trees through that cost share program. Also, replanting must follow the removals to create space. The trees on our street tree guide, they're all shade trees. None of them are understory trees, so we have to create space for these trees to grow. Not only do we need to remove trees and make sure we've got the appropriate locations, but opening up that space allows for sunlight, nutrients from the soil, and water for those trees as well. And then, of course, through this effort, we will definitely work to diversify the urban forest. So in 2019, we have identified about a little over 700 planting sites from the areas in which we have identified trees for removal. That's a little over 30%. It doesn't seem like a lot, but if you look at this picture here, one tree is in a poor location, way too close to the fire hydrant, and the other tree is also on that same property. With the rules set forth in ordinance for street tree planting, this property would be eligible for one tree to go back in. So yes, it is a planting location, but it's only one, even though two trees are coming out. And there are several properties throughout the removal area that we have marked just like this. Timing of when trees can be replanted, of course, will depend on the pace of removals. Property owner is responsible for the care and maintenance of these trees before they are removed, and of course if a new tree is planted. We do also anticipate planting trees within the park system and other public places hopefully being able to use some of the funding through the relief project as well. Really in 2020 is when the planting program is going to ramp up. Estimate planting 500 trees in public parks and public spaces at an estimated cost of about $125,000. These trees will be planted by city forces and by the volunteer planting days in which I mentioned earlier. Also, target approximately 375 street trees as part of a cost share program with an anticipated city cost of about $47,000. Again, these trees would be in those locations where we've removed trees in 2019. Communication, of course, is always paramount to this effort. Some of the communication efforts that you will see in the short term is communication around the replanting ordinance change, the requirement of the permit for planting street trees. There's been a press release go out. We will be sending out a letter to the licensed arborist and to all the garden centers. We also have updated the street tree guide. Maples have been removed at this point from the street tree guide. Also, more communication, of course, around the Sioux Falls Relief Project. The news conference was held earlier today. A press release also went out today here, of course, at your informational meeting. More education through the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, social media, utility bill inserts, other community outreach, websites, and a dedicated email address. So with that, we would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Kelby. Councilor Brecky.
Got a question. I noticed that you removed maples from the street tree guide, and I was going to ask about that because I had a really interesting conversation with a local arborist, a very reputable one, and he shared that concern that people are just kind of looking across the street and say, what are my neighbors planting? You know, I think I'll plant that. That looks good. And he says he believes that on its own, without a little further leadership from the city, we would be planting too many maples, and they are subject to some problems that he can see on the horizon, you know, may create a problem for maple trees. And, you know, so what he advised me as a homeowner was look at what your neighbors have planted and plant something different. Don't look at what your neighbors are planting and plant the same thing, because, you know, that kind of an issue. And I was, you know, going to pass that along as that kind of leadership or, you know, statement. Could that, something like that, be in the materials that people are given? Because it is kind of a natural reaction to just kind of look around your immediate neighborhood and see what people are doing. And should there be more leadership from us, you know, or more control from the city as to what actually goes back in those boulevards so that we really do make sure that we have a nice variety?
Yes, no, absolutely. And the biggest reason behind the ordinance change to require the street tree permit was so that we can make sure that that the location is right, and two, is that the species is right. The master gardeners that did a street tree portion of a street tree inventory for us counted over 6,100 trees. Found that about 40% of those trees were ash trees, and about 32% of them were maples. So that's one reason why we removed maples from the street tree list. Again, our diversification effort is to get no more than 5% of any one species.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilor Staley.
Several questions, Kelby. Okay, first of all, the chainsaw certification of the inmates in Dunham Park, fabulous. And just for the public's information, I met with the warden last year, and I wanted to connect him to the city, and I want to connect him to more projects, like Project Trim, helping out. How wonderful that these guys can now use the chainsaw, correct?
Yes.
Yes, they can help us. They charge us $1.25 an hour, which I think part of that goes back to the inmates themselves, which is good. But it's a really win-win thing. So my question is, we used them in Dunham Park. They are, and how many did you say we had go through that program? Did you tell us?
I believe there were 21 inmates. Each one of them removed one tree as part of their certification.
Oh, 21, okay, 20. So are we planning to utilize this workforce even more moving forward?
Yes, I've had conversations with Pat DeYoung, who runs this training effort, and would definitely like to come back and remove other trees as part of this training effort as well.
Now that they have that training, and they just have to be supervised, correct?
Right, they have to be supervised. This effort, what we have talked about is that they would bring back other inmates that don't have the training and to get them certified in their chainsaw certification.
Right, but then at the end of the day, we're going to have a really neat group of workforce people to help with chainsaw work.
Right.
Correct, yes. Okay, second question. After 2019, are we going to be doing any more removal? Will there be like a 20 marking on a tree? Are we doing, how many different phases of this removal are we going to do?
The 2019 is the first year of a 10-year removal plan, so we anticipate removing the same number of trees in 2020 that we are planning to in 2019.
And then there'll be a 21? Wow.
That's what we anticipate, yes. There's 22,000 street trees that are ash, and removing 10% of those a year will take us 10 years to remove them.
So this is something, we're going to continue to send the letters out and alert people, 211, call in, okay, all right. Then I was talking with some people, one more and then I'll let someone ask a question before I continue. I was talking with some friends from, I think it was Brookings, and they were saying, and I know you're not, this maybe is out of your expertise, but they were saying, oh, we don't have to worry about the emerald ash borer, it's not going to come here. And I'm thinking, I think once it's escaped into South Dakota, isn't that, would you say it's reasonable to think that thing's going to be hopping northward, westward?
I don't see any reason why at some point that the infestation wouldn't spread through the entire state.
So have you guys been contacted by like Aberdeen? Are they starting to take some precaution? Or
there are some communities that are starting to take some precautions. I know the state park system, especially in their campgrounds, is starting to take some precautions.
To tell people don't plant any more ash trees in the state.
Right, to do that and to reduce their own ash tree population as well.
Okay, thanks. I have a few more questions, but I'll step back for a minute.
Anybody else have any questions? Looks like you're still on.
Okay. All right, so then the other thing I wanted to ask about was this relief project. And I'm going to tell people about this. You're looking for people to give money for this, right? Okay, so you've already got some donors. Then how does this work when people want to tap into it? Okay, we got the money coming in, and then we got Jane Doe and Mr. and Mrs. Jim and Jane Doe say, hey, we'd like to have some of this money to buy our tree.
Right. We're still developing exactly what that cost share program would look like, but the idea would be that we would partner with the abutting property owner to plant a tree in the right-of-way, to plant one that's, again, an appropriate location, an appropriate species, and work with the property owner on that. The cost share piece of it is important because, as we have seen in past efforts, that the property share, or the property owner really needs to have some skin in the game. They need to have a vested interest. And so by participating financially in the planting of that tree, we have found that they're more likely to keep going with the care and maintenance, ongoing care and maintenance of that tree.
Which leads to my next question is, I got the impression that the cities, so let's say I've got 2 ash trees on my property. They come down. As the homeowner, can I say I don't want to replant anything there?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, because I kind of got the sense that you guys were going to be planting anyway. You're going to make a determination that we're going to put something.
No, I apologize if it came across that way, but the cost share program would be with willing property owners. There may be some people who don't want to plant trees back in the right of way and would rather plant a tree in their yard or not plant a tree at all. But again, it's entirely up to the abutting property owner.
So at some point, you're going to collect everything, all the money, and then you'll make some kind of matching grant-like program where we'll give you $10 towards a tree or something, or
Potentially, yeah. We don't have all of the particulars worked out, but looking at a cost share program to where maybe it's a certain percentage or up to a certain dollar amount to make, especially to make it, one, to make it affordable for them, and two, to make sure that we get the appropriate trees back in.
And then just to tell the homeowners, in 2019, when will you start cutting those marked trees down? Is that going to start in January?
We definitely plan on starting in January. Since we can't remove trees between Memorial Day and Labor Day, there's about 30 weeks in which we have to remove more than 2,100 trees, so we definitely need to start early.
And just one more. That little tree farm that's north of town, did I hear you say we might grab something out of there, or we might not, or are we?
We have received a donation of some trees from Split Rock Nursery. Trees are of the size that we need to tree spade them in. We were hoping maybe we could get that done yet this week before frost gets in the ground, but heard this morning that frost may be in too deep and we have to wait for the spring. But we did get a donation of 21 trees from Split Rock Nurseries.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Neisert.
Regarding the relief program, so would you be contemplating funding perhaps up to, let's say, a 1.5 caliber tree, something on a larger scale? Because that's like kind of the sweet spot a lot of times, but it's going to be more costly than, let's say, a sapling.
Right. No, city ordinance says you have to plant a tree bigger than an inch anyway in the right of way. So yeah, definitely that 1.5 inch, 2 to 3 inch caliper tree would be good. Getting anything bigger than that really, especially in the right of way, is almost getting too big, and tree spade's really not much of an option in the right of way. So that 1.5 inch to 2 inch trees really is in the sweet spot, like you mentioned.
Okay, and then would you envision, and I know you haven't worked out the details, that if one participates in the program, that there'd be a requirement that it is planted by the city or a volunteer, or is it something where somebody would be able to just go buy a tree at Home Depot and do it themselves? Or
no, the way similar programs have run in the past, we typically contract the installation. So we would come to an agreement with the species and the location with the abutting property owner, and then contract the planting of that tree.
Okay, so really you just pay your part and they do everything for you, and you've
Correct.
got your tree. Okay, thanks.
Yes, Councilor Starr.
Thank you. Excuse me. I guess I'm curious how the Parks Board weighed in on this relief project and how they felt that the reforestation process should go. Have they had pretty extensive discussions about how this program would work?
We have shared this program with them. They didn't get to the point where the relief project was announced, but definitely the reforestation effort and our efforts with the Community Foundation, and they've been well aware that we've had people approach us with want to donate, whether it's financially or that. So definitely aware. They also are aware of the impact of the park system and the financial piece that'll bring to us.
Good. Mr. Chair, could I ask Mr. Nelson, TJ, a couple of questions? Because I know he was involved in launching this, so if it's possible, I have a couple of questions for him.
Why not?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you. I guess my concern is with Mr. Maris talking about this program, that we're asking people to donate to a program that we don't have all the details worked out to yet of how the program would work and where we're moving forward. So when would we expect to have all the details worked out so we could move forward so people know what they're donating to?
Sure. So there's really two components that the dollars will be going towards. One is replanting our trees in our parks and our recreational trails. That's all done on city land through our city crews. The other part is planting in those boulevard strips. The real fine details are what percentage, what dollar amount that the city would match with them, what the application form looks out. The principles of how that works are set. It's just those minute details that we need to finalize in the next year. And since we won't be doing that until 2020, we feel we have enough grace period to finalize that, and we'll be bringing that forward at a future date.
Isn't the phrase usually, though, the devil's in the details of getting this out? I guess I'm just concerned as a donor how I would contribute to a program that I don't know how the details are going to work out.
Well, you're contributing to a program that's going to leave a lasting impression for generations to come that will beautify our city, diversify our tree population, and leave this a better city for generations to come.
So we'll trust you that it'll work out good. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks for coming up.
Well, Mr. Chair, if you, so as long as you're up, the question I would have is that as a homeowner, if I'm going to be participating in this, then I'm mandated to have a contractor plant the tree. And that cost, see, that you're not only, the cost of the tree is one thing, but then if we're talking about that extra labor costs, that really could double the tree. I mean, when we think about Project Trim, you have somebody come out to trim a branch, it's what, $100 minimum. So would we be paying somebody $100 to plant the tree?
So a good rule, and Kelby's would know this better, but a good rule of thumb is about $300 per tree if we contract that out. There's also lots of opportunities as we go out. You know, there's maybe service clubs or Boy Scout troops who want to help and do volunteer days to help plant some of these to bring that cost down. So there's a lot of ways that we can utilize assets and folks to plant these.
So, but you're visualizing that a homeowner couldn't say, I want to replant the tree myself, which they can do, but to participate in this program, you can't. You're going to have to let someone else plant it for you.
Correct.
Which is going to add on to the cost of the tree. You're thinking $300 labor plus the cost of the tree.
The 300 includes the tree in labor. That's a good rule of thumb for the entire project.
Okay, I think that could be a little problematic for some people wanting to give money for that. I mean, if you're just thinking about here's some money for a tree, when you're going out to replace it. So that would be something I would like to see, that be a little more versatile to just cover the cost of the tree.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Kiley.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah.
So if I were to contribute $500 to the fund for the reforestation of the city of Sioux Falls, I can rest assured that all $500 will be, that I contribute will go to planting trees
Yep.
in the city of Sioux Falls.
Planting trees in the city of Sioux Falls.
And it doesn't matter to me if I wish to do that, just what percentage is going to go to this homeowner, and I do understand the fact that it all depends upon how many homeowners wish to participate and the total dollar amount that you collect in terms of how you're going to distribute that money. Because number one, if you don't collect, let's say X, you collect X number of dollars, but then you, on another hand, you collect 2X amount of dollars, obviously the greater amount can be distributed to more citizens. So you hate to specify right now that 50%, we're going to match 50-50.
Right.
Because that may not go as far and may not impact as many homeowners as, let's say, we get a lot that want to participate, and so we're going to reduce that down to we'll match 33% of the total cost.
Correct. Yeah, we want to make sure, you know, once funds come in, we want to be able to know what we can kind of estimate for what we have available to help with our neighbors throughout the city.
I just want to state that I have no problem with trusting that that money is going to be used for its intended purpose, and I do appreciate the fact that people are willing to contribute to the reforestation of our city. I do have a little bit of the concern that maybe the homeowner couldn't participate in the program if they elect to plant the tree themselves. So hopefully that is something that can have further discussion. In other words, it would not exclude a homeowner if they wished to plant it with their family and make it a family project and a family affair. I would hope that you would visit that particular part of that project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilor Sale.
Yes, TJ, on this donation thing, I see that the emblem of the Sioux Falls Community Foundation is there. Are these tax deductible donations?
Yep. In fact, any time you donate money to our park system or to the city in general, that's tax deductible. So Veterans Park, for example, if you buy a brick out there, that's tax deductible.
So will they be administering the funds? Will they hold the funds?
Correct. The community foundation will be collecting that and then turning those over to the city when we spend those on the trees.
And just so I'm clear, there's no formal plan in place to distribute these funds until 2020.
Right. 2019 is focused on removing the trees. We need that space and that canopy available so we can plant these trees and they can thrive. And 2020 is when we'll start launching the replanting of these efforts.
Go ahead.
Well, and let me just echo, I think Councilor Kiley and I are saying the same thing at the end of the day, that you wanted to, I'm just asking that we leave an opportunity for an individual to do it themselves if they'd like to.
That's correct. I'd like to see that kind of flexibility for the homeowner to participate in the program and also have the ability to plant the tree if they wanted to do so, but obviously working through the city of Sioux Falls to ensure that the correct species is planted and it's planted in the correct spot as well.
Yeah, we will look into that. Thank you.
Well, and the other aspect is you're not, then the homeowner's also going to be putting some money into it. So it's not going to be, you know, so we don't know, maybe you're going to be giving 25% and the homeowner pays 75%. And in that case, I really think that it would be a good thing to say to the homeowner, yeah, we'll give you 25% and you can plant it yourself instead of mandating that you're going to have to pay this extra amount.
One of the most important things for that tree to survive and thrive is for that homeowner to have a vested interest in the tree. So.
Okay. And just so I'm clear, so the funds, they'll start collecting funds as of now, this campaign just doesn't start?
Live. You know, we'll encourage people on Giving Tuesday, the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, we'll make a push on social for folks to donate as well, but it is up and live to collect dollars.
Well, thanks for hopping up, jumping in on this. Thank you, Kelby. Next, we will move to, we have a utility rates presentation by Director Cotter. Welcome, Mark.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for having us. We've got our finance team and the public works team is here, and so we've got a number of slides to take you through as we've had this discussion over the course of 2018, really starting back in March. If you remember, we produced this publication that really kind of rolled up the history of the water reclamation facility. And then you've had questions over the course of the summer, and we've produced additional information just recently last month. I felt like we had a really good discussion about not only the current state of the utility, but the look forward. Tonight, in addition to water reclamation, we're going to take you through all of the public's utilities, sanitary, landfill, storm drainage, light and power, water reclamation, water purification, and really give you a picture of what those necessary rate increases are needed on 3 out of those 5 utilities. And then, Tamara, did you by chance hand this out to everyone? So as a take-home for not only the council, but the citizens that are here, we worked with Multimedia Services to create just a one-page takeaway of what are those necessary rate adjustments and in which utilities to make sure we can keep them on a strong footing and keep moving forward. All right, let's get started. And so I think it's critical, it doesn't matter which utility, we've got to have continued investment in our existing infrastructure to reduce risk and maintain uninterrupted service. You know, these utilities are out there, they're exposed to the elements, and we want to make sure that we can deliver very reliable service to our customers. If there is an interruption, like a water main break, we just had one yesterday. Our water team, for example, has crews on call. They mobilize immediately, doesn't matter the day of the week or the hour of the day, and they move out there, isolate the issue, and work to get those customers back on track very quickly. So we do that with all of our utilities. All right, just a recap of enterprise accounts. Cover the true cost of the enterprise with cost of service rate models. It covers the operation, maintenance, periodic capital replacement, new capital acquisitions and improvements, and debt service requirements. We'll start with Light and Power 2020 to 2023 rate analysis. And so today we are presenting to you what the look forward is on the next 4 years of of rate adjustments if they're needed, and that's why you'll see 2020 to 2023. Jerry Jongling is the Light and Power superintendent that leads this team. A quick recap on Light and Power. It's a very small defined territory, but it's an important territory. We have about 2,700 customers. Almost 400 are governmental accounts. Just pay attention, if you would, to the top two of the largest customers. There's 14 buildings that the school system has that this utility provides the power to, and then water purification is the second largest customer. That way, if you look at it from having a good, stable electric supply and cost, everyone in the city of Sioux Falls enjoys the benefit of having this municipal electric utility because the water purification, that's where they get their power from. So the others are listed there as well. Approximately 50% of the electricity provided goes to public entities. All right, one of the things that we'll do throughout the course of the presentation is just really try to give you what's one of those key foundational statements that has been made in the past that's really set these utilities on a strong financial footing and a good planning footing. This particular utility, we've negotiated long-term power purchase agreements to secure reliable and cost-effective power with Western Area Power. That's the government entity that manages the power off the dams on the Missouri River. We have a contract out there to 2050, and then our supplemental power that we buy is from Heartland Energy based out of Madison, and we have a contract with them till 2036. As you look at the operational costs for this utility, just the wheeling cost just for us to buy wholesale power is about 72% of the 2019 operating budget. This team also maintains about 20,000 street lights for safe vehicle and pedestrian activity. There is no debt in this utility, and there's no debt planned for this utility. There's two real key areas to bring your attention to that need investment for this utility. There's annual circuit improvements, and a second substation will be constructed. That has a capital investment of $4.47 million in the next 5 years. And then this team actually operates out of a building that was built in 1889 and has had subsequent improvements over time. The main structure, we can't even park our main vehicles in anymore because they've gotten larger. Floors don't support them. And so we're planning in the end of the 5-year capital program to construct a new office and shop facility for this utility. Here's a typical graph that you've seen in the past. The gray bar that generally runs horizontal across the center of the graph, that's really the target where we want to be for our 90-day operating reserve. And so in a perfect situation, all those bars would hit that. That's essentially where we want to be at the end of the year and throughout the course of the year so we can have operating cash to run the utility. As you see some of those investments that start to come in 2023, we drop below that line, but we feel comfortable that that's a snapshot in time, and that if we just take a 3% rate increase across for 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023, slowly that fund starts to recover back to its target and allows a smoother approach on our customers' rates. So to give you a perspective of what the average residential customer would experience with their increase in their bill, if you just look at that top line 2020, a 3% rate adjustment, the typical residential customer uses 456 kilowatt hours of electricity. Their previous year monthly charge would have been $61.08. That would have been basically in 2019 dollars. And then with the 3% rate increase, that would add $1.83 to their bill to have an adjusted cost of $62.91. We've rolled those out to model forward the additional 3 years for your perspective there. All right, next utility is the Sioux Falls Regional Landfill. This also looked forward on the next 4 years, 2020, 2023 tipping fee analysis. These are the tipping fees that the haulers pay, and also the customers that come direct to the landfill. Dustin Hansen is the landfill superintendent that manages this utility and this team. All right, some quick facts about this utility. This utility is regional, serves a 5-county area of Lake, Lincoln, McCook, Minnehaha, and Turner. That expanded area is about 256,000 people, and it's generally located about 5 miles west of Sioux Falls on 41st Street. That distance is getting shorter each day. So, there's 2 typical terms that we talk about in this utility. MSW, that's municipal solid waste. That's your typical garbage that you throw away, everyday trash. And then there's C&D, construction, demolition debris. Those are, in most cases, the dumpsters that you see on construction sites, concrete, wood, metal, and glass. You know, one of the key foundational points of this utility is we would recommend that we continue to implement policies that promote waste diversion and recycling, investments to capture, deliver, and sell landfill gas to POET, and use technology to on our waste compactors to really maximize the density and preserve airspace. Last year we showed you a couple of screenshots inside those large landfill compactors that tells the operator when they're hitting optimal density, because once you get to an optimal density, you know that you've basically smashed out any reserve airspace. And you know, when we started this process probably 10 years ago, we were at about 800 pounds per cubic yard. Now we reach over 1,400 pounds per cubic yard. As the more waste we can put in that respective area preserves the life of the landfill significantly. We're planning to construct a new cell in 2021. That would be the excavation of it. And in 2023, actually put the liners in it. Just to give you some perspective, that next cell will be about 17 acres in size. It'll get excavated over 70 feet deep, and it'll provide about 9 years of storage for us to deposit waste. We talked during the budget presentations about the leachate force main. Today, the black water that comes out of landfills after all garbage has a natural moisture to it, but also as rain goes on the working face, soaks in that black liquid that comes out of a landfill. This is called leachate. We have lagoons that hold it, and then we haul it into town and we have it treated at the wastewater facility. We did a cost analysis. We're actually going to set a small pump station and a force main and pipe it to town. It'll pay for itself in a fairly short time, be much more efficient than hauling that waste. There's no debt in this utility, and there's no debt plan for this utility. We also have no rate increase recommended for this utility for the next 4 years, 2020 to 2023. All right, storm drainage utility, 2019-2023 fee analysis. You do have on your council docket next week, Lance Weatherly and Andy Berg will be coming forward to give you a little bit more in-depth discussion about the storm drainage. It's a very personal utility. When people want good drainage, some of you have seen the big project that we're doing this year over at Marion Park near 43rd and Marion Road. We're putting in that large underground detention facility to provide better drainage to about 240 acres of mature land over there. That's essentially that's a key part of what this utility does, which is improve neighborhood drainage. All right, just to give you a perspective, this is a utility that has multiple funding sources. So there's a drainage fee, and that drainage fee is paid on property taxes. So there's a small part of your property tax that you have a drainage fee that everyone in town pays that owns property. And then there's a platting fee revenue. There's 2 key platting fees we'll talk about, and that's paid by developers at platting. Those are the respective buckets that they fill. Drainage fee revenue is a critical revenue source to make sure that we can continue to build out this urban drainage system. Funds the operation and maintenance, funds capital improvements in existing areas. It maintains the flood control system along with the levee system, and then also provides capital dollars as we develop the city of Sioux Falls. All right, there's just some good before and after pictures here of what the investment from this funding does. There is, a number of storm intakes through and across the city. There's a lot of deterioration that happens near them. There's a lot of water flow. There's also, with some of the salt and chemicals that we use during the wintertime, accelerates some of their deterioration. You see us do, several of these every year. This is a great before and after picture. About 10 years ago, we really started to work with adjacent people that owned property next to these drainage ways that had severe erosion, and we've had a number of very successful projects that have gone back in, worked with the adjacent neighbors, got the design to a point where it's going to condition the water and really be able to be maintained. There's a bench on the one side so we can actually drive down it with maintenance equipment, but just really good program that we generally do about one of these every year. Storm drainage funding also has a sump pump collection system project. One of them is to reimburse developers for the materials that they put in new subdivisions generally on the backyard line. And then this is a picture of a retrofit system where it was an older, mature neighborhood that did not have a sump pump collection system. And you might see like that property there is at a frequent pumper, probably 12 months a year. We provide them a pathway to actually get connected to that retrofitted system, and then it will tie right into that storm intake structure and then be all underground. Gets rid of the icing, gets rid of a lot of the algae growth that happens on the surface. In major rain events, you'll see some of the intersections go underwater. It's critical for us to not only have a good conveyance system underground, but to also make sure that those pipes are clean and open to their capacity, and then where they dump into, that those drainage channels are free and ready to receive that water. And so there's a constant effort to look at intersections that have issues like this, and we'll look at the entire system from the river through the drainage way back through the piping system, and if retrofits are needed, we'll make them. Street sweeping is a key component of this utility as well. The first street sweeping that occurs, this utility pays for, that keeps all that sediment out of the intake and piping system. Soon as the snow melts in the spring, we go to the field with 3 sweeping crews and work as quickly as we can to get all that material off the roads as we can so it doesn't get into the intakes and piping systems. You'll see regional BMP essentially means that this is a regional stormwater holding facility, and what this will do is the BMP, the best management practice piece, holds that water back for a period of time so the sediment can actually drop and the clean water flows over the weir. There's programs and platting fees that help fund the land acquisition, the construction, and then ultimately the maintenance. And then the levee system, we've celebrated in recent years that the levee system has been certified. The critical legs of the levee system have been raised by 5 feet to provide the additional protection. And now we've got to make sure we dedicate resources that we maintain the levee system. The Army Corps of Engineers each year comes and does a very detailed walk of the entire system and provides us essentially a report card and a list of to-dos to do. And we carry out and get those things done. This utility, really, its main purpose is to safely convey stormwater runoff to the Big Sioux River. It's to prevent property damage through the construction and regular maintenance of the urban drainage system. We utilize modern technology. Really, this is modeling software to identify drainage improvements to be incorporated into the capital plan. And then we comply with state and federal water quality requirements while partnering with other agencies to promote water quality efforts in the Big Sioux River. Here's a list of the key projects, Colville Avenue drainage improvements. If some of you may remember that in 2010, 2011, we had that neighborhood that's just north of Augustana just continually get a lot of high flows, a lot of flooding, a lot of basements filled up. Those houses were just an increment above the curb. But it was another mature neighborhood that we did a very detailed analysis to say, could we put more infrastructure in to get this water out of here? Or is there any other alternatives? And really the best alternative, most cost-effective alternative was to create more green space. So we put it out there as voluntary home buyouts, and we really didn't get any calls for about the first 3 years. And then we had a lady that called and said she was ready to move, and then ultimately that started the domino effect. And it's really been to do it on their time, and ultimately, but a long-term strategy to create enough green space in that area, which is good for pervious surfaces, but ultimately to create some detention in there to not only protect that area, immediate area, but downstream. Sump pump collection systems, there's two components to that, like we talked about, is sump pump retrofit projects. We try to do 3 to 5 of those a year. We also use that fund to reimburse developers for the materials that they put into new subdivisions. We're investing a substantial amount into developing areas and existing areas, and then also continuing to do regional stormwater analysis and strategic improvements to allow larger areas to really have improved drainage. We've, in the recent years, studied about 25% of the city, and we've plugged in those necessary improvements into the capital plan, and they're funded with this rate package today. Okay, so to give you a perspective on the annual drainage fee analysis, this is annual. Some of the other ones we talk about are monthly. So just that top line for a typical property owner for a 5.4% rate adjustment. If your lot size was 7,500 square feet, take that times the unit financial charge to get your annual storm drainage charge. With a 5.4%, it would create an annual change in that fee of $2.75. And so later in this presentation, I'll break that down to a monthly basis for you. But that deck of 5.4, 5.4, 4.4, and 3.4 will allow this utility to continue to make those necessary and timely drainage improvements in existing and developing areas. All right, now just a couple of slides on the platting fees. And so these are paid by development, but there's two key platting fees that developers pay. It's the drainage system cost recovery, which that really funds the construction aspects of regional detention ponds, moving the dirt, the pipes, the outlet structures, and then ultimately that oversized storm sewer as it gets to that pond. So anything that's over a 24-inch pipe, we pay the material difference. So if it's a 30-inch pipe that it takes to come to that, we have a schedule of fees that we look at the difference between a 30-inch pipe and a 24-inch pipe, and we pay just the material piece of that from an oversizing standpoint. Then the regional detention charge, the second platting fee, and that is if your land drains into a regional facility. And a regional facility is generally a large pond that's probably serving the detention and BMP needs for 200 to 300 acres. That specific is for the land acquisition costs. Okay, so we last took a look at the platting fee structure in 2013. We have inputted all the most recent costs of what it will take to maintain. There's a 50-50 cost share of this with drainage fees and platting fees to do those respective improvements that I just listed on the previous page. And then we applied an inflationary indexing adjustment of 3% forward to 2023. And then we looked back and said, okay, how could we do a 5-year phased approach to bring these platting fees up to what we feel is the right amount? So that was our approach. And then one more item that you'll see is that we've worked with the development community and the Infrastructure Review and Advisory Board. We started with a subcommittee. We had an idea come to us that, just as development evolves, we had language in the ordinance that was probably there for over 20 years that basically said, if you have a lot that's 5 acres or more, say it's an industrial park, if you have a lot that's 5 acres or more, you have to build an on-site detention facility and then release at single-family rates. but in exchange for that, you would pay a lower platting fee. Well, we're starting to see subdivisions get graded in larger tracts, and the idea came to us was, why don't we build maybe a larger pond downstream and network all that stormwater to one? What would be the difference? At the end of the day, the release rate is still going to protect downstream property owners. So we formed a subcommittee, really kind of, took a hard look at this from a developer standpoint. They would still have the flexibility that they could do an on-site detention facility or look at kind of having, call it a common pond for a subdivision. On the city side, we wanted to make sure that financially the fund is correct. And so you'll see that there's a hybrid fee in there that if they choose to go down this sort of a performance-based analysis approach, they'll actually pay a little higher platting fee than what they used to. They used to build an on-site detention pond, then pay a single-family platting fee. Now you'll see in this next slide here if you look at single-family across the top, in the existing, that second column, today a single-family platting fee is about $1,978 per acre. And the hybrid fee doesn't exist because ordinances wrote specifically if you have a lot 5 acres or more, you have to put an on-site detention facility and then you'll pay single family. So we looked at a number of different solutions based on topography, based on how a subdivision lays out. This is going to work for some, won't work for everybody, but does provide some additional flexibility. Ultimately, for us to reach the same result from a storm drainage utility. So now you'll see that second line, that row put in there is hybrid, that would fold in. That's essentially a cross between, fits in between single family and multifamily. Pay a little bit higher platting fee and have some flexibility to locate your common pond where you wish. It's been very well received by the engineering and the development community, and IRAB just recently approved that. The platting fee rate adjustments are on the bottom as we did that analysis. And we'll go forward on the next platting fee. This is the regional detention charge. Again, updating our costs and then developing a 5-year phased-in approach, and should have put this utility and platting fees on a good footing. All right, Sioux Falls Water Purification 2020-2023 rate analysis. Greg Anderson is the water superintendent that manages this utility and leads this team. This utility really is on a strong foundation because it's invested in Lewis and Clark, water conservation, and teamed with the USGS to model the Big Sioux River aquifer so we can very thoughtfully place new wells to position them where they have the most deepest parts of the aquifer, richest soil stratus, to really give us a resilient supply of water today and into the future. Some key modeling assumptions. This utility invests approximately $13 million annually in rate-funded capital projects. We were planning and is in your 5-year capital plan to construct the third connection to the Lewis and Clark regional system. That's essentially west of the city, about a mile west of Highway 17 on 41st Street. This utility, we also, a key aspect of the capital plan is to invest in source water improvements, which essentially are wells in our own well field and the transmission mains that move that water from the well field to the plant. This utility will pay off 5 of the 7 current loans in the next 3 years. It is on schedule to be debt-free in November of 2026, which is, I think, remarkable from what a council has set as a good foundation, what city team has set as a good foundation, and very not normal for water utilities across the country. We do not recommend a rate increase for this utility in 2020 to 2023. All right, and last one is water reclamation. We spent a lot of time on this over the course of 2018 and recently in October, so we just have a couple of summary slides. That picture, as you know, is the water reclamation plant in the northeast part of the city. All right, the current state, again, is we've got aging infrastructure, we've got steady growth, we've got a growing commercial and industrial base, we have requests for regionalization, and we are anticipating future regulatory requirements. Wastewater is the first utility, it's the foundational utility that goes in to open up neighborhoods, and so we want to make sure that this is not only set up solidly for current customers, but future customers, as well as an option for regional communities. This is the rate analysis that looks at really what's the right respective rate that we need to have our customers at to hit that second, essentially horizontal bar. The first bar is the operational target. We always want to have about 90 days of cash based on our operating budget in the bank. And then the light blue bar is essentially we're consistently doing $6 to $8 million of cash-driven capital projects a year. And so we've got a nice smooth rate as those bars start to just meet up to that second bar. And so our recommendation here, as we've talked in recent days, is a 6% rate increase in 2020, 5% rate increase in 2021, 4% in 2022 and 2023. It's a nice smooth landing as we go into this next big build out of our wastewater system. All right, this gives you a typical monthly sewer impact to our average residential customer. And so this is a slide you've seen, but I do want to just put a little bit of time into this slide. So in 2020, with a 6% rate increase, for the average customer that uses 4,638 gallons of wastewater, or 6.2 consumptions, your 2019 bill will be $32.25. And so with a 6% rate increase to adjust your 2020 bill, that would be an additional $1.89 monthly rate adjustment. And then we did that calculation for you and for people that are watching for 2021, 2022, and 2023 as those rate adjustments come down from 6 to 3%. We also thought it may be interesting for us to not only just focus on the 6.2 consumption unit, but we actually took a look, if you remember, we took a look at how many people actually use one consumption unit traditionally every month, two, and that the second to the last column on the right tells you what that cumulative total is. And so basically 4 consumption units or less, 52% of our customers use that amount of water. And so when you then update the math to what the impact would be if you only used 1 consumption unit a month, updating the fixed fee and the volumetric charge, that'd be an additional 54 cents a month. 2 consumption units would be 80 cents a month. 3 would be $1.06, and 4 consumption units would be $1.32. And then just on the 6.2, that's the one from the previous slide, that's the $1.89. All right, and I think this is probably one of our last slides, and so we wanted to do kind of what's that monthly impact based on what we've talked about today. Light and Power is up top. Remember, only a very small defined territory of people are in the Light and Power division, but we wanted to show that. So the 2019 rate, your typical bill for that average residential customer would be $61.08 with an increase of $1.83. This is only for 2020, and we can certainly create these for all the respective years through 2023 if you wish. And then down below, storm drainage, we back that from an annual fee on your taxes to a monthly rate. And so the storm drainage fee would equate to about 23 cents a month. Water purification, as we shared, we do not recommend a rate increase, so that would be 0 change in your bill in 2020 from the 2019 rate. Water reclamation is $1.89 for a total of $2.12. That's what we have for you today. Thank you for inviting us, and if you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them.
Thank you, Director Cotter. Questions? Councilor Brekke.
I'm dangerous when I come back from a conference. I've got questions, mostly just informational ones. With regard to Light and Power, one of the things I learned in the innovative world is cities like Los Angeles and, are anticipating the increase of electric cars. And they say that in 5 years, through incentivizing or regulation, they hope to be at 40% electric cars. Wow. I was also talking to some other people who are selling, the outlets, as they wire the nation for electricity. And he told me that in 3 years, right now there's 3 companies selling cars, electric cars. And in 3 years, 10 companies will be selling electric cars. So, it's likely to see the price go down. So, and that in the country, that there's a goal to be at 50% electric vehicles in 10 years, which I thought was just fascinating. And I just wondered if that's something that you're thinking about, because that's going to create a larger demand, for electricity. And if the price comes down, I had the experience of actually getting to ride in one. I didn't want to drive it, but I got to ride in one. I mean, it looks just like a regular car. It moves a heck of a lot quieter, but they've really perfected them to a point where they've corrected some of the the flaws that they had in those initial versions. So I just ask it out there. Are you having those kinds of discussions? If not, it might be something to just be thinking about.
Mm-hmm. I think it's good for us to be thinking about. I've been really personally just surprised how long it's taken for that technology to really come forward, because there's been discussions about it for a period of time. I do think some of the improvements that are planned, that's in your capital plan, with having the second substation and then having 2 really good sources of power for us to buy power from WAPA and Heartland, we'll be able to meet our customers' demands. But that's good. Good discussions.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. It's maybe too early to actually take action, but it's certainly not too early to just start having dialogue and to be thinking about that. The other thing was, when you were talking about that area over by Colville where when you purchase the houses, are you purchased the houses to remove them to create green space? Is that what you're talking about doing?
Yes, so we've purchased, I think, just probably almost 11 or 12 houses so far, and they're generally, if you drive Colville Avenue, just north of Augustana's ball fields, and there's generally, the west side of the road is much lower than the east side of the road, and so we've had really good cooperation for those from those landowners, because they've been impacted a number of times. And so ultimately the first step was, let's just capture the green space, and then once we have a large enough area, then let's develop a retention pond or a detention pond. And what that'll do is it'll just allow us to slow down and hold that water, and then ultimately properties that are from that point really through probably 229 will have even more relief, because that area is really flat, and once we get a deluge of rain, there's impacts.
I guess the follow-up question for me then was, were those homes relocated? Because they were functioning homes. Were they relocated and reused somewhere?
We tried that on some. Several had water damage, and so that was kind of the first flag to anybody that if they wanted them, we couldn't really be sure that there wasn't a substantial amount of mold in them. And so anytime that concern comes up, people usually back away. We did try to go to an auction with probably the best one and got no bids. And it was a nice ranch house. Going into the bid, we had 3 people that were very interested, and the day they came to it, they didn't submit a bid. So we try, but a lot of times it just doesn't work out.
That's just again one of my issues that I'm kind of pledged myself to is trying to keep those affordable houses from moving out of our neighborhoods. It seems like every time I turn around, I've been hearing about that. It'd be nice maybe if we could have used some of our rehab money to rehab them to a state,
right,
where they could have been sold. Just thought for the future.
No, good stuff.
One other question on the wastewater reclamation. Just a question for you. I just found out recently, in sort of a happenstance way, that out at Chancellor, there's an ethanol plant that uses tree waste, that converts tree waste to ethanol, and that produces a higher grade of ethanol, which they sell to Poet. And I was just wondering, with all of this ash borer waste that we're going to be creating, if there might be some opportunity there, if you had explored that and were aware of that. I assume you probably were, but I wanted to ask that question. Is there a possibility for us to be, to be selling that tree waste from the ash borer, to Poet, so that it's at a rate where we could make some, recover some costs and they could create that higher level of ethanol, which they can sell at a higher price?
Yes, and so Poet and Chancellor has been a wonderful partner. Actually, in February will be the 10-year anniversary from when we started selling them landfill gas. So we're in the process right now of negotiating the next 10-year contract. And then just a few years ago, and Dustin Hansen runs this utility, we bought that grinder to really start grinding our own wood waste. And so we sell wood waste ourselves along with Mueller Pallet locally to Poet. And if it's clean, they can essentially take all we can. Deliver them, and so we have recently submitted for a grant to buy I'll call it a monster grinder, because we expect that there'll be a substantial amount of wood coming through, and we're hearing some positive comments from the state that we're going to get some grant support to buy a high-powered grinder, so we can, we'll pave an area so when the trees come, they can go on a clean piece of ground. Today they go on dirt. And when we scoop up those trees, run them through a grinder, they've essentially got too much contamination. But absolutely, we're working with Poet to look at how can we, what's their requirements and how can we meet them. So I would expect there'll likely be multiple dump sites in town. Mueller will have free dump sites. We're looking at ours. And then ultimately, there's just going to be an awful lot of wood waste in this area, and it's great to have a beneficial reuse.
One further question.
Okay.
I learned when I was at this water reclamation plant in Los Angeles that they add tree waste and leaves to their biosolids, and that creates a higher grade of manure or biosolids which they spread on soil. And I just, I was thinking of that when I learned that. I was thinking about, my friend Teresa has talked about, having a tree trimming program, by the city at some point. And if it could be, done in such a way that, you could create a better or more saleable product, maybe that would be something, that we could look at. And because it would be a more economical way for us to actually, provide that. And so I was just wondering if, and again, I don't know what we do with it, but they said tree and leaf. And so I was wondering what we do with the leaf waste, because we have the dump site. So, is that something you're familiar with too, and would be interested in looking at, or no?
I probably have to have the team weigh in on that. Essentially, what we do today with our biosolids, we haul them out to the ag fields and we knife them in. So it's like the perfect situation for soil. Before that comes into contact with the environment, those nutrients go right into the soil. Part of the capital plan is for us we're going to be a fair size facility that we're going to actually dry that now to what they call a class 1 biosolids. And it'll be basically like a very dry fertilizer. And the parks team will actually be able to environmentally use that on their parkland. And so, but we can, people do a lot of different things with biosolids. I think Rapid City does a number of different things. But we can come back to you with some information on that.
I just think, those are ideas you just want to explore them.
Right.
The question on the tree waste, what do we do with the leaves currently? What do we do with those? Do we just landfill those, or?
No, we have come out to the landfill sometime. We've got a large working face just for compost. And so there's a whole process that we turn that compost and we ultimately turn them from leaves into amended soil.
Okay, so for what it's worth, they were actually selling the biosolid, whatever they were creating with the leaves, trees mixed together with the biosolids, the tree waste was a higher grade of manure, as I'm an old farm girl, that's what I call it, and they were actually selling that.
Okay, we'll check into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Councilor Starr.
Thank you. One of the things starting with light and power, and with the Development Foundation being here today, I kind of wanted to combine a part of it. Do we have the ability with WAPA and Heartland to buy additional power if we had a large manufacturer or another group, or how do we forecast that into the system? I mean, I know that's difficult to guess what's going to happen in the future, but what ability do we have to buy additional power and sell it, I guess?
We have great ability, so we just have to work with those two partners, and then Heartland have some great incentive programs for entities to make it very attractive for them to come and reduce their power costs for the first 5 years. So if we get somebody, Counselor, that says I think the threshold is 1 meg per day, that's a lot of power. And you look at places like Heartland that have made long-term investments into these power plants and wind farms, it's important for them to be able to take that power and resell it so they can make their payments. And so they've structured some really good incentive programs. So if somebody comes into our area, like the Premier Center was one, used over 1 meg, and so for the first 5 years has very low cost power.
How do we share that, or how does your team share that with the Development Foundation, or how does that get communicated that we have the ability for some very low cost power then?
Well, just generally any entity, any economic development opportunity that comes that uses power, they're already asking for any and all incentives. And if we can fill in an incentive, like one was recent, was a cryptocurrency industry, used a lot of power. They've since gone away, but we've got those connected immediately because we want them to come, and then ultimately we want them to be successful. And some of these operational costs, if you can just even reduce them in their initial years, really puts those businesses on a good footing. So, and we also communicate them up with Planning Development Services team. And so anybody that's starting to have any level of speculation to come to Sioux Falls, they're typically asking, okay, how much water do you have? What's your wastewater requirements? Who's going to provide power? And those incentives come up right away.
If I could, one more that I kind of wanted. One of the things that you've done with the rate modeling is you've looked at across the board percentage increases for all users. Did you, when you were looking at that modeling, did you say, okay, here's that one consumption unit property or someone who's using the minimum? I look at a grandma who's no way is she using the minimum charge for water or waste or those type of things, that maybe that's a smaller increase that's picked up by the other end of the model rather than an across the board 5% increase type of.
Yeah, so I would, just my initial thoughts on that is that Sioux Falls, when we've shown you those benchmark slides in the past, we've really tried to keep our low fixed charge low, and then people just basically pay for what they use. So the person that only uses 1 or 2 consumption units has one of, their water and wastewater bill is some of the lowest bills they'll ever pay. And so that's been our strategy. If you look at like some regional water systems, like Minnehaha Community Water, they serve a large area, but they have, in the scheme of the area that they serve few customers. So their basic charge has to be larger because they've got to meet their operational needs. So we've taken a different approach and really tried to keep our fixed fee low for everybody and then have people just pay based on their volume.
So while I'm doing rates a little bit, maybe that's my other, when I was looking at tipping fees and for the regional landfill and kind of the same thing. Have we looked at, we're covering our costs, but do we need to incentivize recycling more than we are by higher tipping fees? Because I think in the region and larger parts of the region, we're probably really inexpensive in comparison, but by being inexpensive, are we encouraging more people? And it gets really expensive when you were talking about opening a new cell. Do we need to encourage that recycling maybe with more of a financial incentive to get that out of the waste stream?
Well, I probably wouldn't recommend doing it at the tip fee. One of the strategies we've done, just like incentive disincentives with construction contracts. So if a contractor is willing to complete a project on time or before time, we incentivize that by so much of an incentive payment. The same flip side, if they don't meet the deadline or they run late, they pay a disincentive. So we've got a similar structure in place for the haulers that they have to meet a certain target, and if they don't meet a target, we really have a disincentive that starts when they're 80% of that. So like if the number was 100, for example, and that becomes the annual goal, they have to meet 80% or they'll fall into the disincentive where at the end of the year they have to pay an additional surcharge of $1 per ton. Second year that they don't meet it, they have to pay $2 per ton. And then third year they lose their license. And so I think we've got that in place. The recycling market right now is in a really tough place worldwide. But I would say we've got kind of a good set of boundaries in place to incentivize recycling.
Well, I think to follow up a little bit on that, I agree that we've done that. We've put those incentives in for the hauler. I'm not sure the average consumer feels that incentive. Right. And I'm not sure that I'm smart enough to come up with a way to make that felt more without the hauler passing that on in some other way. That because it's really hard for the hauler. They've done their education programs. We do education programs as a city, but I'm not sure that message totally gets to the consumer, or that the consumer can feel that incentive by putting more things in their recycling unit rather than just in the landfill, because it's really inexpensive when it comes to a per unit citizen or a homeowner as part of that. So,
well, that's why we have to rely heavily on the haulers to do their education, because we have a whole team that gets them materials, but they are the connection to the customer, and so that becomes a challenge with our current essentially subscription process. Yep.
Thank you,
Councilor Neitzer.
Thank you. Could be randomized peaks and garbage cans by city employees and penalties. I don't know how that would work. I do want to ask about storm drainage specifically, but I will say that you kind of talked about it, and this is something that I've struggled with over the years, was debating the whole user fee versus the second penny, and kind of wavering on that before I got on the council and since getting on the council. And and I think you kind of hit on it, is that in the word is nexus. With the user fee, there's a nexus between what you use and then what you pay. And so as I've thought about it, the more the more you divert it from the fee, which nobody likes fees, but the more you divert it, the less incentive I have to conserve, because I'm not feeling the pain of using more and more. Right. And then if you use more, as we found in the last 10 or 20 years, then we have to build more infrastructure. And we've been able to delay having to do these expansions for 10 or 20 years because we've heavily incentivized conservation.
Right.
And the other nice thing about that as well is that then obviously for the elderly and some of those that use less, obviously they're going to have a lot less of an impact. And then those of us that are indiscriminately watering our lawns are going to pay through the nose. Right. So anyway, so storm drainage is really interesting. Is storm drainage, would you call that it's not really an enterprise fund, is it?
No, I think we call it a special revenue fund. Is that right, Tom?
Okay, yeah, because, do you try to have 100% of the money it spends come from the storm drainage fees and platting fees, or is there
That's generally it. If we're building a brand new road, we've generally said that those assets, the storm drainage system on a brand new road, is a qualifying asset of the street system, and that participates with sales tax.
I think you hit on it a little bit. What would you consider the operating expenses for storm drainage, like street sweeping and some other things?
I think we got it right in the book. Is it, Dean? Do you have that number?
Well, I don't even need necessarily a number as much as what would it be composed of? What are some examples of operations in the storm drainage?
Dean Borkart, Public Works. As far as operational budget, ultimately when it comes down to it, like Director Cotter explained earlier, it's maintenance of the system. It could be the levee, it could be the flood control system, it could be the first sweeping, all the repairs and maintenance of the inlets, the sump pump collection system, all those things come out of, they're funded capitally, but we have team members that do some of that work individually within our team on individual projects.
When I went on a ride along and they were jetting out those storm sewers, would it be those employees and that stuff that's part of
Those
that?
trucks, those, the replacement of those trucks are funded in rental rate revenue for the replacement and upkeep, the repairs and maintenance of those vehicles, the labor of those individuals that were doing those projects are all built and wrapped into our operational budget.
And I'll make a pitch for them. As I rode with them, they try to get to all of those within 5 years, like on a 5-year cycle. And they're getting kind of strained, I think, because they haven't added employees in many years, but the city has grown substantially. So,
Just for your knowledge, page 45 of your 2019 operational budget, 2018 operational budget for storm drainage was $1,955,656.
okay, all right, great. And then maybe the last thing is just an overarching question. Obviously, storm drainage is really emotional. We've been seeing that recently. There's problems, throughout the city, real or in some cases maybe perceived. So what is the major driver? I mean, what do you want to do going forward that you're maybe not doing now? Does it have anything to do with the fact that we seem to be having 100-year rainfalls every other year, or is it, what are we thinking that we want to increase standards? What are we looking at doing? Because you hear a lot of that from, the refrain many times is, the city permitted it and it's not working. So it's an emotional deal, and it's one of the toughest things we deal with when we go see citizens.
I would say it's really, when you look at how development and design was done over time, a lot of it was kind of static, this piece of land and that piece of land. The next piece of land upstream assumes that everything is flowing just fine downstream, and then the next piece of land gets modeled and it has an output, and it's assuming that this piece of land is draining fine, and you can have a stacking effect of errors if there was truly a bottleneck that's happened on the first piece of land. Then that can actually back up water on the second piece of land, and it has a compounding effect. And so one of the things that Lance has done, he's funded it in the capital plan a few years back, is we started to do these regional analysis. And we've worked mainly on the west side so far, and really going, in this case, say all the way from the interstate ditch all the way west to the limits. And we'll go out there and capture all the elevations of the adjacent houses and the drainage ways, the size of the pipes, the size of the ponds, and then run that entire system calibrated, and then ultimately you'll start to identify those improvements. And that's really our long-term strategies. We've modeled about 25% of the city and put those improvements in the current capital plan. And really our long-term for the next 10 years, we want to get to the other 75% of the city and identify where those gaps and bottlenecks are and get them improved. We had one situation where we had 2 houses built in an important overland flow path. And so this last year we bought both those houses. And we'll be raising those because they're nice houses, but those things happen because it's, you're doing things in more of a static approach as opposed to a dynamic model approach that will look at the entire watershed. Now we have drainage consultants on call that we can actually, one that happened over by Willow Ridge before any of that work started. We had all 3 of those design engineers that were working on 3 separate subdivisions send all their design files to one engineer that we knew and trusted, and we asked him to model the entire system and tell us where the gaps were, even before things were built. And so that's really our long-term play. We're going to leverage technology a lot better and just coordinate between those developments a lot better.
Okay, I will defer. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, just a friendly reminder, we've got 2 counselors to hear from yet. We've got one more topic yet after this, and we're supposed to, according to agenda, have public input by 6:25. So, Councilor Kiley, you're up.
Thank you very much. I'll try to make this quick. Thank you, Director Cotter, for your efforts in this area. I know it is a challenge. You've got a lot of responsibilities. Your team has a lot of responsibilities, and they execute those very well.
They do.
The city is in good hands. Our trip to the National League of Cities, and one of the more interesting sessions that I attended was off-site, and it was their water reclamation plant. And the Los Angeles mayor actually has a goal by 2035 that they don't have any discharge from the water reclamation into the Pacific Ocean is where they're currently discharging. By the way, it's located. They purchased 240 acres of oceanfront property quite a while ago for $25,000, I believe. It was a good deal at that time, back in, I think it was in the 30s. But anyway, admirable goal, and I mean, the use, a lot of the use would be gray water needs. I mean, it could be used for washing, you know, street cleaning, for watering parks, things of that nature. Water is a very precious commodity. It's a resource that I think we all have to treat as if we are going to be facing some of the same conditions that California is currently facing. I also know to reclaim water to that extent, we'd have to have a pretty sizable investment. I mean, we're already looking at a sizable investment, but it would be considerably higher than what we're projecting it to be. That was my statement. My real question is, and it deals with storm drainage, and it's the sump pump collection systems. As you know, 4 years ago, 4.5+ years ago, I expressed an interest in this. We are investing on the city side, we're investing $2.1 million, and that is providing the materials for the sump pump collection system, and then it is the developers. They are also investing in the sump pump collection system by actually installing those materials. At that time, I expressed a concern about the utilization of the sump pump collection system, and I have had meetings with your department as well as with the Home Builders Association, and I must say that 4 years later, I still have some concerns that they're being utilized and taken advantage at the levels that I would like to see in order for us to truly recoup our investment of $2.1 million. So I want to say that publicly. And I know that Councilor Neitzer has shared some of my same concerns, and that we've discussed these with you, and look forward to meeting with you on that. And I do understand with the Home Builders Association that going as far as maybe requiring every home to hook up to a sump pump collection system, if one is available, that it will increase the cost of the home. There's no doubt that it would. But whether that's $400 increase or $500 increase, I'm not sure exactly what it would be. It is certainly better than pumping water out of your home, as many people have had to do during some of these 100 and 500-year events. But anyway, I think it's worth looking into what we can do yet to promote. And I'm not saying that we're going to go that far as to make it mandatory, but I think we need to look at everything, all of our options, or including, do we continue to place an emphasis on this way? In this area, are we getting the bang out of our dollar that we should be? Mm-hmm. So anyway, look forward to that discussion, and any comments that you'd like to make?
We understand that both you and Councilor Neitzer, this is an important issue. It's been an important issue to us, and I think maybe sometimes it was the timing of the last discussion, but I would certainly entertain after the first of the year that we engage maybe initially at a committee discussion to kind of reframe up the sump pump collection system, pros and cons, and go from there. But I appreciate your interest.
Councilor Staley.
Okay, and I'll try to be really quick here. Get my 3 minutes in. Okay, Councilor Brecky, I just wanted to say, she's talking about moving those houses out over by Cova Lake, and I know Lifescape was able to sell their houses, and I think some of them moved out of town, out of Sioux Falls, where there's less costly regulations to set up a new home. Also, okay, so the first thing I want to say, Director Cotter, is that I was involved with this council back in 2007 when we started raising our water rates. 93% we've raised them. Not since we've been on the council, we've had no increases, but right as we got elected, we did. So I'm really excited that we're going to be out of debt in our water department, as you said, and so I'm proposing that we should have a water rate decrease, a unique opportunity to give back to the citizens. How often does that happen in government? We had it in the state like in the last 2 years, where we were going to get some property tax money back. The school district kind of grabbed at that, so we didn't get to see that rebate. But to me, I think that would really be a neat thing to look at. But I'm going to use Councilor Neitsert's words. He said that we avoided feeling the pain with this water reclamation thing through the years. We've avoided feeling the pain. So I want to avoid feeling more pain as we move forward. Okay, I don't want us to feel enough pain that when we use our toilets that we're going to be like in so much pain that we can't afford to pay our bills. So I met with the Director Cotter this morning, along with our mayor and TJ Nelson, and Councilor Brecky was there, and our staff was there. And I'm going to just show them what I asked from you. Okay, Dave, come on up, please. So I've got a concern. We didn't talk today about the price tag on our wastewater treatment project of $260 million. $260 million, as I've said before, over doubled the cost we paid for our event center. We are paying $9 million in our debt payment a year on that event center. So these are some things I wanted to know. Maybe he's going to zoom in. Okay, so what I'm going forward here, I'm going to be talking about a promise of protection for our people. And Director Cotter, I loved your rates that you have up here for the, you've phased those things out. We're kind of coming down to a 3% rate increase until 2023. That sounds great. These are the questions I have that I posed to him this morning. I want to know how much income are we bringing in each month and year now on that wastewater treatment fund. So what is the current income that we get? I've asked how many accounts are currently on the books. That would be commercial, multi-housing, and residential. I've asked, tell me the debt obligation currently for each year. I was told we don't have it for the month, but what are we currently paying in our debt payment now? So we know where we're starting from. That's the interest, the principal, fees. Just like with the event center, Tracy Turbeck always was able to say it's $9 million a year. So right now I want to know, what are we obligated this year to be paying on our waste treatment plant? As you borrow for the project in the next 7 years, because it's going to take 7 years to complete this $260 million project, what will the annual debt payment be? So in the midst of this, what will we be obligated to come up with? What is the backup plan in the case that the population does not grow as expected? So we're going to have this debt, just like when you buy a house, you've got a debt. You have to pay that debt. So even if you lose your job, or even if you get cut back on your hours, if you don't bring in that income, you have to pay it. So the same thing, we're going to be obligating ourselves to this $260 million debt. Will the existing sewer customers be totally on the hook moving forward for that $260 million? Can water rate money be used to supplement the payment for wastewater expense? And I got a question on Facebook just now. Someone said, yeah, why don't you use some of the water rate money, since you're going to be out of debt, to pay for the wastewater treatment? Well, we can't do it. Director Cotter said this morning, ordinance prohibits us from commingling those funds. And the last thing I said this morning is, can the second penny be used as a backup for the debt payment, like it is being used for the parking ramp, which is also an enterprise user fee fund? And I do believe that the difference between the parking ramp and our toilet situation, our gray water, our waste treatment plant, is that the parking ramp, people can choose to park there. So if we've bonded for that, I think about $18 million. If people don't use that parking ramp and pay their fees on that, then the second penny can kick in. We can make our payment. The thing with the wastewater treatment is that we got a captive audience there. People have to use their toilets, they have to use their sinks, so they can't make a judgment to withdraw their support like they can in a parking ramp. So these are the questions I need to have answered. Maybe they will be, maybe they won't be, but I feel that at the end of the day, 10 years from now, if we haven't grown the way we think we're going to, And then we come back to the citizens and say, we got to pay this thing off. And we got a $12 million payment a year. Sorry, we're going to up your bill to $300 a month. I have to have a clear conscience that I'm going to be able to say, didn't go along with this. I mean, the numbers have to etch out. We have to etch it out. And we have to look at the worst case scenario, in my opinion. So it's the biggest expenditure that I can recall in our city. I thought the event center was the biggest one. This is turning out to be the biggest one. So these are things that we talked about. I'm hoping to get some really great answers that can just satisfy my concerns and that of the citizens.
Did you have something to add to that at the end, or are we?
Counselor, I just wanted to thank you for your questions, and it's our goal to send them out to you and the rest of the council by the end of the week. And then I just wanted to make awareness that this is informational tonight. First reading is actually next week on Tuesday, and there'll be a break, and then second reading will be in December. And so I wanted to make you aware of that, and we greatly appreciate your time and attention.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Mr. Huber. No pressure. Welcome.
I think I can safely say good evening.
Yes.
I'll try to be as brief as possible. Tom Huber with the Finance Office. Again, I'll be as brief as possible. We have briefed this before with the City Council, but other than the budget presentation that was presented with the IT budget here in August, the last briefing would have been in March, prior to some people being on the City Council. So, but this software replacement is necessitated not only by the advances in technology, but also the fact that some of the existing software that we use right now by some of the largest users will no longer be supported. So we were going to be required to go through a complete new implementation regardless. It's the last of the big software packages. We've replaced the financial software several years back, the land management, the code and permitting software, and the public safety software project, which was just completed and implemented earlier this year. It's not as big of a dollar amount as some of those other software packages, but it has no less the impact. It's a substantial impact to a lot of users across the city and doing their jobs, as well as customer impact to how we interact to taking customer requests and going through the work process. So real quickly, what is asset management? It is technology that is in use today. It's essential to tracking the condition, the preventative maintenance, the forecasting the life cycle, and prioritizing and completing the work on infrastructure and facilities. It touches almost every department. You can imagine we just got done talking about the utility infrastructure, the amount of infrastructure the city has, and those assets, and as well as facilities. So this software has a tremendous impact across all of our departments. It's primarily, again, one of the reasons that we are in this project is not only to modernize the technology, but also the fact that some of the software is no longer supported. It will standardize us to one system for work orders and work management and going through the work request process and forecasting our infrastructure, as well as it will allow us to integrate to some front-end customer request management systems that would allow us, from the time that the customer identifies that a pothole exists to the time that the work request is received and to the time it's done. It will work through all those processes. And lastly, I think one of the biggest things is it will allow the city to go mobile with software, access to enter and receive information. I think of the inspection process, they use iPads now, not paper and pencils and come back for duplicate entry. It's all done in the fields with iPads and phones, and that's what this technology will offer us. It was a very thorough process. Most departments were involved and will continue to be involved throughout the process. We were very deliberate in encouraging participation at all levels to make sure that a wide variety of employees were involved in this selection, in that we selected the best software for the best price. And completed a detailed needs assessment, again, that selection process, and spent extensive time in the contract review process. And we're well rewarded for doing so because we had two very close competitors, and we were able to bring the cost down substantially as both wanted the business. It's an enterprise-wide, city-wide installation, and so that aided in our efforts to reduce the cost. Team did select Data Transfer Solutions, DTS, the ViewWorks product, and as you can see, highly relevant software product to the city just by looking at their customer accounts. You can see they have customers that are in our region that do what we do, as well as states and counties and some large private entities that are in the business of needing to manage a large amount of infrastructure. The contract terms, the initial investment is $835,000, which you can see about 40% of that is the software license and setup costs, but there's a lot of additional time and effort required to implement and configure the product, the development, the integrations, and the conversions, as well as the testing and the user training all the way from beginning to end. So we were pleased with the price. We expected actually and planned for more. But we were very pleased to receive this price. The annual software maintenance is about $60,000 a year, which is locked in for 5 years. And we do have an option to add the pavement management option for inspecting the city's pavement condition and uploading that right on into the software. In addition to the city team and the DTS team, we again plan to add Barry Dunn professional services to this contract, as we've done with the financial and the public safety contract. It gives us an independent perspective to ensure we don't make costly mistakes along the way, that we do implement best practices. They keep us grounded. I have experience with other implementations, not just this vendor specific, but also other vendors. And they provide that good reality check to ensure that everything is ready and we don't make costly mistakes along the way. It's an as-needed basis contract, so pay for what we use, with a not-to-exceed price of the $90,000. So these items are on the consent agenda tonight, and we would certainly appreciate your support so we can get moving on this project. We said it began back in 2015 is when we actually started some of the work for this project. So I hope that was fast enough.
That was terrific, and sorry if you felt rushed. You did great. Questions? Councillor Staley.
So, Tom, we tell the citizens the total cost is $835,000. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we tell the citizens we're doing this. We show this to them in just a simplistic synopsis. What do we say that this is? How is this going to benefit the people?
This is going to make the city much more efficient. It allows the city to go mobile. It prevents duplicate entry. It allows us to collect the information, prioritize the project. It allows us to take from the time the customer request would come in and automate it all the way through to when the work is performed and that the work has been completed. So
what kind of work? Give us an example. You mean
fixing a pothole?
Or how about if somebody calls up and they've got a concern about a stoplight that's out?
It would go right into this work order system and be parsed out to the department seamlessly, and they would get it right on their iPads while they're in the field to potentially get to the location as fast as possible. Again, a good, efficient use of city resources, staffing resources, all the way through to the collection of the data to make sure that we are prioritizing our projects and infrastructure replacement. This includes like cammering the wastewater system. That cammering information comes in and it allows us to collect the data and to set up a preventive maintenance program to make sure that we're completing the necessary maintenance on these infrastructure assets in a timely basis. So it's taking care of the city's assets, which is of critical importance. It's how the work gets done. It's how we move it through the process. And like I said, we use it today. We just use multiple systems. It's not standardized. And it's some of the technology is no longer supported. We have to move forward.
Thank you, Tom.
Councillor Starr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. What does the state of South Dakota use?
I do not know what the state of South Dakota uses. They probably use multiple packages in some variation, but I'm not aware of what they use.
Okay, does Minnehaha or Lincoln County use a similar program, or how do they
Not aware of the
theirs?
software that they would use. I know Minnehaha County just implemented the same financial software that we utilize, so, but I'm not aware that they use the size of a software package is this. They probably use a couple different combinations, smaller packages like we use in certain instances that will go away.
Okay. If I may, Mr. Chair, one of the things that I serve on a couple of boards on behalf of the city, and they're having difficult time getting information from the county's new accounting software. We didn't get a financial report at the museum board. I've heard different departments aren't using their new software, and they're doing it on an Excel spreadsheet because the auditor's office isn't doing that. How do we continue to partner with them if we can't get an accurate, I have a fiduciary responsibility serving on the museum board to be a good example. How do I do a good job? I mean, I guess I'm trying to balance what we're using as a city and sharing information with them when they can't share information with us. And what are they doing different, or did they buy an older version of the software if they have the same system, or they just don't know how to run it?
It's growing pains. It takes a long time to work through the change management of implementing a new software package. It's new technology. People have to learn how to use it, and it takes a while. And it took us a while too. We're finally recognizing that good, solid data coming out of our financial system that we've implemented and went live in 2014. It takes a couple years to really understand how you can use the software to the greatest potential. And I think, and we'll go through some of that here as well. You hope to minimize it and to put it into action as fast as possible.
Thank you.
And if I'd like to add that we have pre-funded this. The money's already been set aside for this software. We knew it was coming. We got ahead of it. We have the IT revolving fund. And so we have pre-funded the software package.
Councillor Neitzer.
Real quick before we run out of time. So a year or two ago, we procured a report, and it's a very large book that has all of the different buildings and assets, and they went through. That's related to this, right? Where they got
that report will actually get uploaded at some point into this software. So again, we can track the maintenance that we're doing on the HVAC systems. One thing you learn what needs to be done first. And by tracking that information, you learn what you need to take action on and what's out there that has the potential to need repairs.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick, in working with audit when we were looking at that preventative maintenance, one of the things that you see with that report and what's going to help here is that you'll now be able to track all of this stuff, and you'll be able to get stuff in the capital program earlier where you say, geez, we've been repairing this roof a lot. It's time to get this thing replaced. We're spending, whatever, or the HVAC system in whatever, Carnegie needs to be replaced because the guys are here every other week putting in a new furnace or whatever. So it's forecasting, it's giving us better information and spending money better. So I think that's where it's going to help.
It's just like on the slide, long-range forecasting and decision-making information. You have to have it to make good, smart decisions.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom, and everybody for working with our time constraints here. We have to move on to public input portion of the meeting. Have we got anybody with anything to say on any of the topics this evening?
Excuse me, Council, I do want to take the opportunity to correct one date if I could. So we will update this document tomorrow, but it does say that the informational meeting is today. First reading is next Tuesday. The incorrect statement is, second reading is, it states December 20th. It'll actually be on December 4th. So we'll update that tomorrow, get it to Tamara, and it'll get on the council agenda. Sorry about the typo.
No problem. Thank you. Nothing for public comment, it doesn't look like. All right, so we will adjourn and be back at 7 o'clock. Thank you.